I see live popped up.
Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. We're going to start the discussion. And a couple of things I want to go over as far as housekeeping. I got some distinguished panelists here, and I'm going to allow them to introduce and give their own bios. But what's going to happen is I'm going to give them a question, and then they're going to be answering the question with their own professional opinions. And if you have any questions you want to comment or anything, you can always submit a question or through the chat room, and I would make sure that the panelists get a chance to answer them. Okay. Real quickly, my name is Dr. Malik Raheem. I'm an assistant professor at Wilberforce University in the Clinical Rehabilitation Counseling Program. Prior to that, I worked at Fresno State in Counselor Education Department. I would like to start off, since it's some beautiful people here, I would like to start off with my brother, Dr. David Julius Ford.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dr. David Julius Ford Jr. I am an assistant professor in the Department of Professional Counseling at Monmouth University. Before that, I was faculty at James Madison University for 4 years in their counseling department. And I'm a native North Carolinian, and I self-identify as a queer Black man, and I'm just happy to be a part of this discussion.
Sister Nickia.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nickia Lowery. I am a licensed professional counselor here in Georgia. I have a private practice. It's called Optimum Purpose Counseling and Education, LLC. Prior to being a therapist, I worked in child welfare for many years. I mean, from working with not just child welfare, but also the juvenile justice side as a caseworker. So, my wealth of experience has been in working, within the community and the various facets of the child welfare system. And then currently I would say that my specialty would be trauma. It's definitely my specialty. And recently I published a guided journal on helping individuals kind of move through that post breakup from those abusive and toxic relationships. So if anybody is kind of struggling in that area, that is available on Amazon, and it's called 12 Ways to Healing. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Dr. Asabi Dean.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Dr. Asabi Dean. I'm a native Chicagoan, just to follow after Dr. Ford. I'm an assistant professor at Quincy University in Quincy, Illinois. I was educated at, and I'm a proud Chicago State University student for a bachelor's and master's degree. I went to University of Iowa for my doctoral work. And my predominant research experience, much like Nickia here, is mental and emotional trauma. I've created and I teach trauma across the lifespan course at my university, and I previously taught it at University of Iowa. And I've actually done a couple of recent publications in the area of mental and emotional trauma also. And Nickia, it's great to hear about your book. I'm going to be going to look for it after this.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Dr. Guy, are you there?
She's on mute. I'm not sure if she muted herself or if you need to unmute her.
Yeah, she's on mute.
Yeah. Tanisha. Oh, looks like she's connecting another way also, and she's muted that way too.
Technology. Can't live with it, can't live without it.
She'll be in soon, I'm sure. You know, we've all been in enough of these Zoom rooms to know that eventually everybody shows up and gets connected.
Right. Well, let's start off with the first question. And hopefully we could go the same route that we went from Dr. David to Nickia and to Dr. Asabi, and then hopefully we can get everything worked out with Dr. Guy. The first question I would like to ask you all is, there are mental health professionals who believe that ethnicity, race, gender, and other identities are not relevant when establishing a therapeutic relationship. How do you feel about this?
See, that's bullshit. My thing is that's likened to that whole all lives matter argument, is that, you know, we're all equal. And one thing you got to realize that our counseling theories were created by normed on white men, and so they didn't take into account the intricacies of working with communities of color and the specific trauma experiences that we've had. And you don't take into account how mental health field and physical health fields have marginalized communities of color. And so you cannot do your clients justice when you don't bring culture into the room in the beginning. You know, think about the work of Dr. Norma Devines and cultural broaching and our multicultural social justice counseling competencies. They all tell us that you have to look at how a person's cultural background is impacting not only why they're coming to you, but how it's impacting our relationship as client and counselor and as supervisor and supervisee. You know, I can't talk to, even though, okay, I may come from a CBT lens, but I have to realize that in some respects, when you're talking about irrational beliefs, you know, irrational beliefs comes from my own personal lens. And if you don't consider someone's culture, you could be calling their cultural ritual irrational because you did not learn about their culture from the beginning. And not only is that unfair to the client, that is unethical. So anybody who does not see how culture does not impact the client-counselor relationship and a supervisor-supervisory relationship is doing their clients a disservice and supervisors a disservice.
Wow, thank you, Sister Nickia.
I mean, he said a lot of what well, first of all, I'm glad he said that's bullshit. I was gonna say, what school did they go to? But yeah. I wouldn't even say that, you know, necessarily it's a Eurocentric versus more of a supremacist type of a mindset, because even within our framework of education, we know that culture plays a part.
Right.
I mean, it's on just practical, clinical, it's on every biopsychosocial questionnaire. So for a clinician or someone within our field to be that dismissive, that speaks more to their character and where they are at mentally, in my opinion. And I mean, and then piggybacking, I mean, he covered it as far as why culture is necessary. So I don't know what more I can offer as far as explaining why it's culturally necessary. But I just wanted to add that to me, that is that's very deliberate in whoever is stating that culture is not relevant.
Dr. Asabi?
I would definitely say I agree with both of them, and I really agree with Aqueel when she said, well, he covered it, let's move on. However, I guess I would simply add to what both Nickia and David said, and I would say it's really a position that's afforded those with privilege. It's exactly the same as saying I don't see color. You know what I mean? We're all the same. Why can't we all just get along? You know what I mean? And so it's really something that you hear from people in positions of privilege or even communities of privilege. And it also, though, harkens to a clinician who doesn't want to truly do the work. The work of making the connections for the client of how the environment plays into their concerns or their issues, and the work of even wanting to get to know a different cultural group, you know, because, you know, the multicultural competencies that David brought up actually say, you know, immerse yourself a bit into the community or the population that you're going to be working with. And this means you don't have to do any other work. You can just live the life you're living, work with clients all from one perspective, and just pretend like that elephant isn't in the room. My recommendation to clinicians who feel this way, it would be to name the elephant in the room, you know, versus choosing to ignore it or deny its existence. Much like what we're going through right now in our society, a lot of what we're going through is just individuals in communities of privilege denying the existence of our actual lived experience. And now they're hearing or seeing it when they see the cameras. And even then you have to see the concern with individuals in communities of privilege, even when they try to justify what they see on the video, and you go, what is going on with your lens? It is what it is. Quit trying to change it and click it and make it into something different. And so that would really be the only thing I would add to the answers from before.
Okay, I'm gonna go a little bit off script. So do you think that the person is just hitting a blind spot, or are they being intentionally ignorant to the fact that race and ethnicity really has an impact on a therapeutic relationship?
Both.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's both, a little bit of both.
And I would say that, to me, I would just go with intentional, because to be educated in this field, you have had to come across either the multicultural competencies or the social justice competencies. You had to have come across a multicultural counseling or a multicultural psych course. And so you had to know there were different lived experiences for groups growing, growing and living together and sharing space, at least in the US. And so it feels pretty intentional, even though I can give them an out, much I can give a police officer an out whenever he happens to handle calls or with Black and brown people very differently than with white people. I can give everybody an out, but I'm not gonna do that today. And I actually believe it's intentional. You're refusing, you're being lazy, you're justifying, and you're simply not doing the work. And I think it doesn't just happen in the counseling space. I think it happens in their personal spaces too.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I would say this much. You know, there are some counselors out there that have never taken a course, because the course is practically new to the KCAR curriculum, and there's some counselors out there who've never taken a multicultural course and do not get the professional development that they need. So look, after seeing CESNET over the past week, I'm wondering, who trained you motherfuckers?
That's why I said, what school did they go to?
Where are these programs? I've actually heard that from other counselors in our Black Clinician Safe Space. I don't know how many of you guys are a member of that Facebook group.
Yes.
And people are saying, I am like really becoming concerned about the people I'm working alongside because of some of the things I'm hearing on CESNET, on ACA's listservs. It's been a very big concern. But back to your point, David, I guess I would have to say again, to answer Malik's question, you've come across culture in this world. So for you to not understand it or recognize it, it has to be intentional. You have to turn the television off. You have to turn the radio off. You have to intentionally not listen to NPR. You have to ignore friends who say, have you heard this? You have to ignore other counselors. You had to have gone to a conference and seen some cultural sessions and ignored them. That feels intentional. So because it's all around you, to me, it feels like you can't get away from it unless you're intentionally walking away from it. And I can't imagine it not bumping into you and you haven't been forced to evaluate yourself and your beliefs. And if you haven't up to this point, I have to say, I believe it's intentional. So while I respect what you guys are saying,
yes,
on it, I believe it's intentional because there's too many ways that it could have got to counselors and clinicians in privileged communities.
Well, I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute. I just want to put it this way. What about if you see the blind spot as more of a denial? Because I think that comes into play in certain, that's parallel to each other. That blind spot is kind of them, if I have to really acknowledge this, I have to deal with, X, Y, Z.
True.
So can that be kind of encompassing kind of that blind spot?
Absolutely. Now I can go with that, and I can. However, then I have to question, we have that one rule, counselor or psychologist, know thyself first.
Yeah. And
so you're denying any experience, even if it's something I know nothing about and it has no effect on our community. Are you being an ethical counselor? So it also still feels intentional there, but I'll go with you, Nickia, that it could be that. But I'm still kind of up here with intent, but I'll go with that at the most.
Excellent.
Thank you, David. He gave me an out on
a question from one of the attendees. Foxy Cleopatra want to know, how do you educate professionals on culture? I'm just going to throw that out to the panel, so anyone who want to respond.
I'll just start the answer, and I'm sure we're going to get a lot here, but I'll just start with the multicultural competencies. Start with a course, in multiculturalism. Just start there. Usually those courses come from, they come with an immersion experience. Just start, because if you just take one course or one assignment and just immerse yourself in a community or a group that you're not accustomed to being in, that's a good place to start. It really does help to break through some of the walls. That would be the way to start. So I would say at a minimum, every clinician, every counselor, every form of helping professional should at least be aware of and attuned to and striving for those multicultural competencies and then those social justice competencies. I don't think being an advocate as a helping professional is an option. At least that's what I teach in my courses. You are an advocate. And so you need to know how to advocate appropriately. And so I would say start there at a minimum.
I would also add being intentional about creating relationships outside of your circle. You have to be willing to be uncomfortable too, with some of that. So being intentional about creating relationships outside of your circle, which most likely that circle is your comfort zone, your knowledge, your experience, right? So creating, opposite of that, maybe even that extreme, whatever, just so that you can immerse yourself in kind of becoming more aware of these, different cultural relevancy and just being even, and I'm stumble over my words. I have so much I want to say. Even not so just because we get stuck on race, right? So I'm not even just speaking about race. I'm speaking socioeconomic levels. All of that encompasses, multicultural awareness, right? So being very intentional about coming outside of that you're comfortable in. I think is just as important as having that book knowledge. You have to immerse yourself in, in those lived experiences.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I would say one thing for us as members of minoritized communities, we have to not be afraid to check folks because of the stupid shit.
This is true.
And call it out. And then for those that do get called out, you can't sulk into your fragility and say, I'm uncomfortable, you hurt my feelings, I'm offended, and tears start to flow. I think about white tears and white guilt, and how that shuts down the conversation, and it comes to white fragility, and then we're stuck, and we're obligated to hold their emotions, and that shuts us down. And so it's a two-way street. I have to be able to call you out, and then you have to be able to don't get defensive and say, all right, okay, I hear you. Let's talk about it. Even though they may be uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Malik, I would add to what both of the panelists are saying, and I would say that David, I've recently stopped holding white women. So when they become fragile and want to cry, I'm not the mammy from the slave house that's gonna hold you and press. I've actually stopped doing that. I've actually stopped, because I'm thinking this actually starts to feel like manipulation, and I'm not gonna do it. And whether you recognize it or not, I'm not going to play into it. And so I back up, and give them space to work through their emotions. And if it takes a little too long, I tell them I'll see them next time. We'll hang out another time, or we'll talk another time as if it's another faculty member. And to Nickia's point, I just wanted to say that this isn't that difficult to get out there and immerse yourself in communities. Many different places give you an opportunity to get a taste and go into a community and try things out And so it isn't that difficult. So you can also do this in a fun manner. We want you to be intentional and do it a little bit more than just a fest, but that's an easy way to get started. So I thought that was a really good one too.
Awesome. Next question I want to ask the panelists is, as people of African descent, we have multiple generations of trauma that we have to deal with. Are there any things you would suggest to mental health professionals in order for us to be mentally healthy?
Anybody, or are we going in order?
Let's start with Nickia. I'm scared to start off with David again. I don't know. We're gonna go Nickia, Dr. Asabi, then David. Hopefully we get Dr. Guy on. But we're gonna say David for last. David's gonna be our cleanup hitter on this one.
Well, you know they're saying check yourself before you wreck yourself. I think you need to be very aware of you. You have to be able to tune into yourself. You have to, recognize when that vicarious trauma is present. It's a lot of self-care that goes into, like I said, I'm seeing trauma every day. That's pretty much what I deal with. So I'm constantly trying to maintain that healthy mindset for myself so that I can be present and there for my clients. But that's an ongoing process. You have to know, your triggers. You have to know what you need to do to kind of recharge. So it's a constant, just for example, for me, I use fitness a lot, so I work out a lot. So for me, every day, I'm, I don't know how familiar you guys are with Georgia, but I'm at the mountains, so I go there every day. And
nice.
I'm hiking and I'm running, and I'm, that's my way of getting that energy out. I believe in energy a lot too, though. So earthing, that's another term, that you just kind of centering yourself and really taking care of you so that you can be there and you can be present for your clients, because my history is very much rooted in trauma, even just my upbringing. So I have to be very aware, when I'm dealing with clients and taking care of me first, and knowing even if recognizing, if somebody calls me on a blind spot I may have, being receptive to those things.
Nice. I concur. And I would say this goes back to doing your own work first, because then you will know your triggers. You will know, you'll know the things that are going to come out and what is going to affect you. And, you'll be ready for it. And it won't be something that you'll counter transfer to a client. I would say using things like talking circles or rap groups like they used to use back in the day with the soldiers from World War I, and creating your own rap group of sorts. I took this time with this Facebook going crazy with the issues in our society, and I turned it into a class. I'm in a lot of white spaces, and I began to just teach via the Facebook. I just started to teach and help mostly white individuals figure out how to appropriately navigate this space that we're going through. And even then I needed to make sure I had my talking circle. So I have this group of Black women, and we meet on Zoom, and we'll talk and pray and get it all out. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like that movie where that guy used to open his mouth and let all the flies out. So I'm sitting here taking all this in, and much like when the kids talks about with clients, and letting it all out. You know what I mean? And so I think that's really important. Doing our own work, having our own space to reflect and process. And then my grandma, she taught me years ago, work hard, play hard. She taught us this when we were kids. And so if you're working hard, you have to play hard. And what I teach my students, since I teach trauma, is to play hard has to be intentional, scheduled, regular self-care. And it's got to be the self-care that works for you. And it's got to be just as much as your clients are in your book, your self-care is in your book. And it's not negotiable. And if the people that go on self-care with you drain you, they cannot be a part of your intentional schedule, self-care or play. And so that's another thing. Nickia mentioned that hers is exercise, mine is spas. I go to a really, really nice spa that has floor to ceiling windows. I'm inside because I don't like bugs, but it looks like I'm outside. You know what I mean? And I put my feet in those fluffy slippers and that robe, and don't touch me. This is the time for me to let loose. And when the time comes for me to really get rid of it, I go out to the little lake by the spa, and I really go out come back totally refreshed.
Yeah.
So being intentional about that self-care also is important and not negotiable. Sometimes we think, oh, I may get a vacation this year, or I may get away. This isn't a may. You absolutely must if you're doing this work.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say,
hold on. Everybody take a deep breath. Prepare yourself. Here comes Dr. David.
I would say this. You know, and I concur with my colleagues, you know, all of that. And for me, my phrase is get you a tribe, man. Get you a tribe. You know, folks that get you, folks that you trust, folks that you want to work with. You know, I have two. And I get to give homage to people like Dr. Don Trehan, Dr. Tony Spann, and Dr. Yamante Cooper. Those are my boys, you know. And then my writing crew, like Dr. Mike Hannon and Dr. Linwood Vereen and Dr. Alfonso Ferguson, Dr. Matthew Bonner, Dr. Tyson Adrich, and Dr. Jason Branch. Like we write together, we do Zoom calls. I mean, we support each other, you know. And I need that time. I need that time to just be with my crew and talk about what is happening in all these mostly white spaces and how I'm still, you know, exuding my Blackness and that's my catharsis. That's my way of taking care of myself. For clinicians, I would say when you're working with minoritized communities, you know, yeah, we have our theoretical foundation, but think about some indigenous healing practices of these communities and integrate those things in practice. You know, even you may be atheist, but still think about ways to integrate their spirituality into your work. You know, you consider that ethically and still be true to who you are and be true to who they are. And so do the work and integrate those things to your practice. That's going to build that connection with your client even more and provide them with culturally inclusive work.
Absolutely. I want to add to what David said, if you don't mind, Malik. When he talked about that spirituality piece, every student in my trauma course does a self-care plan. And one they have to do 4 quadrants. And one quadrant is spiritual. And one thing we've learned over the years, and I've even pulled articles from masters in vicarious trauma, is that spirituality spans quite, you know, it is quite, you know, it's a big span. And so it doesn't have to be that you're going to a church or a particular building or worshiping. It's nature. It's all different forms of things that individuals do. Of course, they say yoga and meditation, journaling and writing, reading and listening to certain types of music. And so it's just a big amount of things you can do to connect with a client spiritually. And it really does help to build that rapport, learn about that client, and you can easily connect with them spiritually. And it doesn't have to mean, well, if I'm an atheist, I have to get on my knees and pray. Absolutely not. There's many different ways to connect spiritually. And I think I really like the term I learned from Nickia, which is earthing. And I think that one right there, almost everyone can connect to, right? We all here living on this big round ball. So I thought that was pretty cool, Nickia. So thanks for that.
I usually earthing or energy. I'll say like energy, you know, because we all can relate to energy, you know, feeling of negative, you know, a positive, whatever, and connecting from that space, even whether you believe in God or not, or, you know, Buddha or, you know.
Whoever, you can feel an energy, right? Absolutely.
Right.
I just want to remind everyone who might be attending and participating, you're free to ask any question that you want of our panelists. So don't be scared. Go ahead and ask a question. But I'm gonna go to this other question. What suggestions would you give to non-Black clinicians on being an ally during these traumatic times?
Allies don't exist.
Ooh. Can you? Ooh, let's get into this. Woo! I knew it was the reason I invited you on here. I knew it.
I was ready for that one. And the reason why I say that is because, you know, people, this whole ally identity is latent in privilege. People that are allies come into marginalized spaces and they drown out the voices of those that are marginalized. And when things get tough, they retreat. They have the privilege of retreating. What I say is, that's just the beginning. That's not enough, though. I say I want an accomplice. You got to put some skin in the game. And an accomplice for me is someone that comes in and says, I'm going to shut up and listen. How can I best support you? And when the rubber hits the road, and when the darts start to get thrown, you lock arm in arm with the marginalized person and take darts with them. And then you use your privilege, because they may get weak. You stand in front of them and take darts for them. Now, when you really want to effect change, you go take the motherfucker that's throwing darts, especially if he looks like you. So if your peers start saying racist bullshit, homophobic bullshit, sexist bullshit, you check them for what they say and what they do, even if that means you losing that relationship. When your family says crazy shit, you take up for those people, even if that means your family says you sideways. That's what I need. Somebody like that. I don't want somebody just gonna say, you know what, I feel bad for it because I'm white. I feel bad for what people are doing. I'm so sad. I hate this is happening. Baby, that's not doing me. No. I need you to really put some skin in the game.
Well, what I was gonna say was that it goes with what you're saying, Dr. David, is that stop centering yourself. That's the main thing for me. And I think that's like the baseline for even walking away. If you're centering yourself, as soon as it gets uncomfortable, you have the privilege to leave. So you have to really take yourself out of there and be there, like you said, be that accomplice, be there regardless, that ride or die. That's stop centering yourself.
Dr. Asabi?
I'm wrestling with this non-ally, this accomplice. I love it. You know what I mean? I've been accepting so little. I've been okay with folks being an ally. Now I'm like, no, I need an accomplice. Take a rubber bullet. I like it. So I thought it was
just some edges today.
That took me somewhere. What I initially was thinking, and I actually still do believe, though, is that to be an ally or an accomplice, I guess, people at our church here in Quincy, and, it's a predominantly white town, so it's a predominantly white church, really want to know how to put out a statement, quite possibly. And I look at some of the things that people are trying to put out as statements, and I go, your heart's not in that. Do you even understand the fight? Go stop trying to get the words right.
Yeah.
So everybody's happy, and go do some self-exploration. I'd rather you just be quiet until you actually have a heart for this, and if you're not called to this, don't put out the statement, because it look like Lego blocks and it look a mess, And so know the history if you're going to be an ally to any group. You know what I mean? Know the history of that group. You know what I mean? Do some research. People have given you snapshots in this day and age of culture and culture clashes. Heck, read the 1619. I think it takes 30, you know what I mean, to start the process. And then you can do something, a little bit more research and figure out what happens then. And so really, I don't think that that's very difficult. So I would say start there. I would say also, to be a proper ally, when you do cultural research on a group and you want to stand with them and be an ally, this could even be me wanting to stand with a group in, say, Puerto Rico, or even going to Cuba. I would say understand some of the ancestral history, because this is where you really can be a proper ally or accomplice to a group or an individual, because you understand the strengths of that group, right? And don't just come in focusing on the negative and the downtrodden, but there are strengths to these groups. It's the reason we're still here. and we're still fighting these battles. We're doing so well.
Mm-hmm.
There were some strengths that we're standing on the backs of some folks who did a lot of work before us. And so know the strengths of those groups and come in with that strengths-based perspective. And this is why, in fact, you're working along with this group, because you know the work that's been done and that you also want to stand on the back of those who went before. And I guess that's really also helpful for allies who get put out the community, because they tend to think they might be bringing something new.
Yeah.
May not talk about Sojourner every day or Harriet or Martin, but this work has been done. This soil has been tilled, and it's not by anyone out just living right now. And let's give the credit to the proper folks, and let's stand on those backs, and let's name the backs we're standing on and give honor, and then try to further the work. So to me, a lot of that needs to happen when you want to become an ally, much more so than just saying the right words. Although I'm not minimizing those protesters. I appreciate them. I think they're wonderful. But I'm talking about when we get down to the nitty gritty and we're trying to change policy or affect policy, and we're trying to talk about framing this society structure so that it works for everyone. That's when I need to have a little bit more history under your belt.
Awesome. Dr. Kimberly Hart, you had something you wanted to add?
Well, I had a question earlier, and then this question that came up about allyship really prompted, and I appreciate Dr. Ford's response, very additive. And my initial thought was about aspiring allies, and the fact that even if you think about allies, they're identified by the community as opposed to self-identified. And what I think the panelists have already spoken to really speak to that, you know, when people center themselves versus centering their service to others, it's not really allyship. And I totally agree about looking for and needing accomplices. I frequently give reference to some in other conversations about the movie Mandela with Idris Elba. I know there's other versions of it, but I remember the instance when they got put in jail and they were all given, you know, their uniforms or whatnot, and the white male that was with them was given long pants. And I was like, I just needed him to cut off his pants. Like, yes, y'all fought and everybody was able to get, you know, long pants eventually, but in the meantime, you could cut yours off. Anyway, I'll leave that alone. My other question earlier when I raised my hand was about Dr. Ford. You responded and spoke to about sort of things that, you know, in communities of color, things that we can do, and about sort of not letting, you're about checking others, and then about not sort of tolerating those responses. And I was wondering if, you know, yourself as well as the other panel members can talk about different ways that that can look. Because when I think about how I check certain people in certain situations, and I guess the short version of this is, can you all talk about some different ways of checking people that may be effective in different situations?
Thank you. Panelists?
See, I know I can be confrontational, so I just say it directly. I'm like, you know what you just did was fucked up. I'm gonna tell you why it's fucked up.
Blunt, straight to the point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How else do you do it? You have to confront what's being said. I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll share a thought that I'm having, and it speaks to what you all were sharing about, you know, these, I'm sorry, I can't say all you all's names at the same time, but you are wearing a patterned bluish gray shirt.
Oh, I'm Asabi.
Asabi, thank you. And I couldn't see you if I was talking, so then I'm like, I can't even look to read your name. Thank you, Asabi. What you were speaking to about like sort of those collective crafted messages. And I was in a call recently last week, part of a different association. They're like, we should say something. And I was like, okay. And everyone else that is on this group are all individuals of whiteness. And I'm in this place where I'm too like, I you know, just because I got something to say, like, I need you all to feel something. And so I put the pose out to them because I could check them and say, what the F is wrong with y'all, and yada, yada, and all these other things. But it wouldn't have gotten a message, you know, in that moment. It wouldn't have accomplished what I'm hoping to accomplish. In some spaces, and other friends, like I have a friend whose house I'm at right now, I could totally check her that way, and she will just step in line, and other people will shut down and step away and not do any better. And so I challenge them in a different way. And so that's why I'm sort of asking, like, what other recommendations you all would give or recommend, because I know some certain ways of checking sometimes shuts down, where I know I've experienced myself, like there's people who are open and ignorant. And there are people who are open and resistant. There are people who are open and, you know, they just need a couple extra turning of the wheels or whatnot. And I don't always have to be the one to do it, but when I'm in a position to do so as a, you know, even as a Black woman, I have educational and socioeconomic privilege that I can, you know, flex. I was talking with a group of students of color, you know, trying to get through their program, and I can flex some things that could get them kicked out of their program. And so, you know, where do I flex the muscles of privilege that I have, even as a Black woman who lacks other privileges? And so, but I know if I go busting in my, you know, department chair's office, yelling and screaming about how this ain't right, I can do that in my girl's house right now, you know, as a white woman, and even, you know, with our friend Tracy, and they'll listen. My boss will be like, here's your pink slip, and I'll see you maybe never. So I'm thinking about stuff like that and sort of other voices and recommendations. And I think some of the things you all said earlier about where do we, like, if that's what's wielding inside of me, how do I go put that somewhere or deal with it or harness it for the moment, you know, depending on the situation that I am in. So I don't know if that makes any sense. Or
yeah, it makes sense, and it actually mirrors experiences I've had. And so what I have done in the academic realm, because I've actually wanted to go into my chair's office and just go, oh my gosh. And I actually stood up in a meeting once. We were having a faculty senate, and one white woman, and she's a pretty good friend of mine, teaches history, and she said, hey, everybody in my class that's failing is African American and male. And so I guess this gave comfort to other faculty. And so another white faculty, a male, he teaches accounting. He said, same in my class. And I think if I was a white woman, my face would have been red because my face was so hot. And I thought, what the hell? And so I said to them, are you guys familiar with research on implicit bias? And of course, I got a lot of head nods to the affirmative. And I'm like, well, you need to go read it. Because if everyone in your class that looks a certain way and is of a particular gender is failing, it has a lot to do with you. And you need to figure out what you're doing and what you could do different. And I mean, what I really wanted to say was, you know, some other stuff that really, you know, that would have got me a couple of pink slips from people who I didn't work for probably. And so I have actually gone the route of educating, of trying to find a place where we all agree. So the literature base tends to be a place where in white spaces, whites already agree with. Oh yeah, we know that literature, we just didn't apply it to this situation. We know that literature, we didn't apply it to this population. And so that's been helpful for me. And I've also had to do it here in white spaces, in town, in church, just start from a place of educating. So when I was even speaking about the Facebook page, I'm just educating, just going from group to group and posting and telling them why that's inappropriate, and posting news articles so they can read a little bit and learn something and then come back to me if you have any more questions. And I've been doing it like it's a class. And so for me, what has been working is starting from a place of literature. And that's what has been reaching my white counterparts. Although there's a level of denial still times, like when they look at the video and they go, and I'm like, baby, that's the knee on the neck. It's inappropriate. It's not anything he was trained on, okay? However, even though that level of denial still exists, at least I know the seeds were planted, and I've seen many now come back, much like that NFL guy who, this could be fake or not, but it was a big thing for him to come back and say, we have been wrong all these times, and Black Lives Matter. Wow, that's a total affront to your biggest fan, the president. And so to me, even that is an example of what I've been experiencing in these white spaces. People coming back and going, okay, now I get it. I saw some other stuff. I read some other stuff on my own. Now what you said makes sense. Can we have another conversation?
But I still feel like everything that everyone has said so far has still been very confrontational, in the sense that you're confronting what's going on and you're being very directed. You know, this is why this is problematic. You know, it doesn't have to necessarily be what the hell, but you know, I've even said things like, help me understand, like, you know, why are you, why, that's my go-to, help me understand. But yeah, because, you know, to get them to kind of go there, you know, and then I counter it with, well, this is why that's problematic, you know, kind of a thing. So it gets you talking, you know, especially with one of the big rebuttals right now is, you know, we're talking about Black Lives Matter, and people are like, well, what about Black on Black crime? Like, that's like the rebuttal these days.
Yes.
So, you know, I asked them, well, you know, why do you feel that way? Do you realize that that's pretty consistent in each culture? Like there's more white people that kill white people, more black people that kill black, like that's not what we're talking about right now. You know, kind of really sit back and think like that. You know.
And we talk about people who are paid to protect everyone.
Right.
Get them to stop killing the folks. Then we can go down to the levels of people killing each other. Yeah, then we can go focus on Dateline and Snaps. Right.
I have one last question from the attendees from Foxy Cleopatra again, and she says, how can all this information be applied in educating children, especially Black children in a white classroom? We're going to start with David.
You better.
And I was talking to a colleague of mine the other day. We got to decolonize curriculum in P20. I mean, really just sit down and decolonize the entire curriculum. You know, it's whitewashed. and it's Eurocentric. People need to know the true story, and we need to start empowering these young Black and brown kings and queens. You know, hey, you weren't just slaves. You know, yeah, Dr. King had his place, but he wasn't the only one out there. You know, you got folks like Nat Turner. You got folks like Medgar Evers.
Yeah.
You know, Brother Malcolm. You got so many folks out there that did amazing stuff for our people. You know, let them know the truth about Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Let them know and July 4th. You know, there needs to be a lot more representation of those stories for everybody. But, you know, growing up, my family taught me a lot about Black history.
Yeah.
So I didn't learn in school. My church members were school teachers, but they taught us like the real Black stuff. Like these were HBC educated folks that came, you know, and I really appreciated that because that was in me a sense of pride and being proud to be Black. And I think my family to this day, I said, I thank you all for letting me know that to be Black is to be beautiful.
Yes. You know, I want to add to that I took my son to Iowa City because I went to University of Iowa for my doctoral program, and he was in 6th grade. And my son was a gifted student in Chicago. And when he got to Iowa, his grades plummeted, and they test those kids 3 times a year because they standardize the Iowa test of basic skills in Iowa. And my son plummeted. I mean, he was in the 97th percentile in June in his testing in Chicago, and in Iowa City in September, he was in the 85th percentile. I was stunned. I had no idea. And so I knew something's going on, and it was really just implicit bias. I mean, period, point blank. However, when my son came home with those test scores, and he told me that his teacher, wonderful woman, but you know, had told him he was average, he was no longer gifted. She actually said this to a 6th grader. And he brushed it off like, no big deal. Here are my test scores. Let's move on. I pulled out the miseducation of the Negro. I wanted to make sure he understood, okay, there's some historical value to this, and you're missing it. And I need you to be properly equipped to educate yourself in a white environment where they're gonna encourage you to go to the back of the room and sleep. They're gonna encourage you because they don't believe you can learn the information. And he became, with the information, not just from the miseducation of the Negro, but other information from going to Kwanzaa, picking up books for children, making sure he knew his history, making sure he understood about Benjamin Banneker, Mary McLeod Bethune, individuals who were in education, and how much they prepared the way for him, how much I needed him to do that work on his own. Because I said, I'm going to be at the university. I'm not going to be at your school helping you. And we can't do our full curriculum like we used to do. We had our own African-American curriculum when we were in Chicago. We didn't have time for that when I was in the doctoral program. So the answer to this question, in my opinion, is to equip the children, whether it be through the church, whether it be through the community, whether it be through the home. Equip these children, and that education that they get in the school system becomes a big addendum. But I'm giving you an education at home also. And when you make them the individuals who are in control of getting that information, like we used to say to they used to say to us at Chicago State, I'm the professor in the front of the room, soak up all the information you can from me. That's what I tell my son now when you go to any environment. soak up that information, come and do more than they're asking you, because they're asking you to do the least. Yeah. And it has worked. My son went into engineering and he became his best advocate. And he became the person who said, okay, she's asking me to do this for science. I'm going to do a little extra. Let me go figure out how I can do a little bit more, because I know she's dumbing it all the way down. And I just told him, make that the assumption in the school systems in America. Be your teacher, white or black, even though he had majority white teacher. So I have to tell you, that was real personal for me, that question. And we're going to have to be in charge of that for our children, or they will be left behind.
Absolutely.
Sister Nickia, you want to add anything?
I mean, they pretty much covered I was going to say of what and piggybacking off of what Dr. Ford said, just about, really restructuring the system. And he, had brought up some of the little bit that they give us during Black History Month. Even that is whitewashed. I mean, yes. Right now, the best example I could give is Martin Luther King, and how they have been using his quotes as a means to kind of suppress, our protests and things like that. And, his kids had to come on Twitter and check them because, Martin Luther King was about peace, but he also carried him a piece, because this is just the reality.
That's right. That's right.
Protect ourselves at the end of the day. And so for you to be telling us, to kind of suppress that when we've been oppressed for however many years is ridiculous. So it's, and I don't just hear white people saying this, there are people that look like us saying this too. So it goes back to really educating us. We have to educate us, because even what they're giving us is still washed to what they want us to know. I'm reading the script there. Somebody else says something.
Yeah.
So we got another question, but before I get to that question, I want to just want to thank the panelists. Boy, I got some really smart friends and associates. Wow, they brought the heat. I didn't have to say nothing, pretty much, just ask the question. Jeez.
You knew that. Dr. Ford come on here. You knew you weren't gonna have to say. You gonna get a chance to say anything.
Yeah, I was worried I was gonna have to move. I was worried I was gonna have to mute him a couple of times. When I invited Sister Nickia and I invited Brother David Ford, Dr. David Ford, I didn't know a whole lot about Sister Nickia, but I saw her post in the Black Clinicians group.
Safe Haven group, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Nickia, though. Y'all don't know, but Nickia is that girl now. She's on the train.
I like this, and she coming hard, coming deep. But I saw Dr. David. I saw Dr. David Ford was on the thing too. I'm like, ooh. See, I know David gonna come with the heat.
That's right.
So, but thank you all for bringing the heat.
Thank you.
But
thank you so much.
Let me ask this question. It's also from Foxy Cleopatra. How do you help your child, especially a Black boy, deal with what is going on right now?
Such a good question.
Well, I raised a Black boy.
Yeah.
And the first thing I did was put my Black boy around Black men. And I actually had him intentionally go and hang out with friends who were in families. So who were with friends who had married Black parents, so that he could see the dance of marriage. Because I knew the research said that raising him as a single mom, he would more likely father children and walk away. And so that's the first thing I did. I tried to go against the research literature. I didn't want him to be out here thinking this was the norm. And so I began to do that. Also, I put him around strong Black men. When my son was being raised in Chicago, he went to a charter school. And the truth of the matter is the American flag wasn't allowed in the building. They had a full vegetarian menu, and they only had the Black flag. And those men in that building taught them how to be men in our community. So that was really helpful also. And then I also began the process of making sure my son was involved in many different things that were culturally appropriate in our community. So I have to tell you, going to Kwanzaa's every year was powerful. Just the Kwanzaa's alone, because he would be around so many African-American men and so many men just of African descent in general, not even necessarily born and raised in America, who had so much knowledge to share with him and would actually give him him cards and emails that he could go. So I thought that was a really good beginning foundation. And then I don't want to negate the fact that I made sure my son had a really healthy relationship with his father. You know, I couldn't get into if his father had a new girlfriend or new wife and all that. He needs to have a good relationship with his father because he has a fairly healthy father who also was raised African American in Chicago. And so I made sure those relationships were all protected too. So I know that I think Black men can speak to this better, but I just wanted to give you my perspective from an African American woman, some things that I did, pretty well-rounded African American child. Did mean intentionally putting him in spaces with strong, healthy African American and functional African American men.
David and Nickia, before you respond, she's calling me out. She said, I need both men to answer as well.
Yeah, she's
so since I didn't say anything in the probably I'm gonna go before Dr. David because I know he's about to bring the heat. But I would say the thing is this, I think one of the issues in our community is Black men and Black women has no partnership. And I think we need to start establishing a partnership. And I don't mean like romantic partnerships per se, but I mean just partnerships to where we support and encourage each other. And we take as Black men, we need to take back our community. And I know I'm gonna probably sound kind of misogynistic, but like David said, oh well. But I think as Black men, we need to start taking back our community and taking the lead. We need to look at these young black princes that's growing up and start mentoring them. We need to look at these young Black princesses and start showing them how a brother's supposed to actually treat them, right? We supposed to show these young princes on how they supposed to actually treat their future queen or their future partner. What we really need to do is just start taking back our community and just start being partners with our Black women, not looking at them as adversaries, but looking at them as comrades. And we are in this struggle together, because when you really look at the whole historical context of just us being here in the Americas, Black women has held the community down. They did everything they can to destroy the Black male, but Black women have always held the community down, and Black women have always been the back of the Black man. So I think it's time for the Black man to start having the back for the Black woman and start showing partnership. And like, I'm a little bit, upset with Dr. Asabi because I've known her for a while, and she never introduced me really to her son. So I guess I'm not a strong Black male role model. So,
that you say, remember, he was sitting in the hallways at Chicago State because he was at school with me.
Yeah.
In there. So anybody opportunity to meet him, but you're absolutely right. I didn't intentionally, but I had so many in his school setting to introduce him to. I've always had a huge support system, so I haven't had to reach out to you or Dr. Ford as of yet. But guess what? He's 23 and he still has those situations. So he may reach out to you all pretty soon for this age.
Well, I have a son too, and I think he's doing quite well because, like you said, he came to Chicago State with me kicking and dragging, but he was coming because I wanted to show him that his dad was serious about education. I wanted him to be serious about education because too many of our young Black men have imposter syndrome, and they suffer from stereotype threat. Mm-hmm. And I think the thing that happened with your son is kind of like the rite of passage to the school to prison pipeline. Mm-hmm. Right? They tell them that you're not as intelligent as you could be. This is not for you. Just like they did Brother Malcolm. He wanted to be a lawyer, and they said, well, maybe you should be a carpenter. And after that, he lost interest in school. And that's what happened to a lot of our young Black brothers, that it's like the rite of passage to the school to prison pipeline. They lose interest in school. They don't see the reason why they should not to go to school. They start, withdrawing. They start doing different things. And then the disciplinary actions are focused on them. Just like you said, the implicit bias just start taking over and it start focusing on them. So it's like, I would really say the best thing is to be truthful with your son, because they can see everything that's going on. They know everything that's going on. Tell them the truth and like Dr. Asabi said, get mentors to get out there and help your son navigate their way through manhood. I'm sorry, I'm not off on my soapbox.
But Dr. Malik, before you move on to Dr. Ford, can you speak a little bit more to partnerships and what that might look like in our community if a young woman wanted to form those partnerships?
I would look at it to where it's like just pretty much a support thing, because I think just like Sister Nickia was talking about energy, we gotta build on both our feminine and masculine energy. So the thing about it is this: let's say, for example, Dr. Asabi, if I'm my weakness is writing, and I know your strength is writing. Collaborating with you. Don't be scared to collaborate with you. Don't be scared to be vulnerable and work with you. Don't look at it to where it's like a competition. Don't look at it necessarily like it's going to be a hookup. Look at it to where it's like it's going to be a partnership that we're going to build this together. You know, whatever that little thing is. So we're going to build a scholarship together. So we're going to write on this project. If like Sister Nickia, I'm sure she's going to say as we getting ready to get off, she might have her own practice, and I'm interested in opening up my practice. Me being able to go to her and her giving me, well, this is what you need, Dr. Malik, this is what you need, this is what you should do, boom, boom, boom. And she shouldn't be worried that, well, Dr. Malik is just trying to be slick. No, Dr. Malik wants to have the knowledge, Dr. Malik want to get the understanding, and then it might be some things that she might not be able to do. Maybe she want to do videos, and I know how to edit videos. Okay, well, I'll help you out with that. So when I say partnership, I mean where like we collaborate and don't be scared to collaborate. And then there's going to be times where she might need a male perspective on something. I might need a female perspective on something. Because my big crush, even though she don't know it yet, Lupita Nyong'o, she's been ignoring me a lot. So every now and then I might need a sister to tell me, well, brother, get that up. Or maybe you should try this, right? I think we need brothers and sisters in our corner to be able to help us out and navigate through this world.
Okay, because when you talked about that, what came to mind was how I mentioned my son had been, I had him hanging out with friends who had family, mother and father of African descent, and they were married. And I did want to add, when you said partnerships, that we need to properly vet who has our children, because childhood sexual abuse and that thing is not small in our community. So I just wanted to say, from your perspective, from what you were saying and from what I was saying, once again, to the person who asked the question, to properly vet those families, and not just because they're African American or African descent do the children go on their own. And when someone's mentoring your child, it doesn't mean you don't have to be present. It can be in a public space and you be available and you be there, and to do that, because that can go a whole different direction if something like that were to happen if someone isn't properly vetted.
And even like, say, for example, with, I don't know, Dr. Ford might have a son, but he might not know how to play baseball, but he wants his son to play in the Little League, right? So he comes and say, well, hey, Dr. Malik, can you help my son learn how to play baseball? That's what I'm talking about, partnership. Sister Nickia, she might be really good at basketball, and I can't play basketball, right? And that's why I can. I'm just using this example. I don't want nobody, trying to test me on the court, because, my step back is awesome. But Sister Nickia might be able to play basketball, so I want my son to learn, so I have him get taught by her and tutored by her. So it's like we just break down these dynamics of this adversary type of situation between the Black male and the Black female.
Thank you.
Dr. David?
I would say we need to get back to, it takes a village to raise a child, and have that village mentality with raising kids. And ensure that young Black sons are in all Black spaces. Most of the time they're going to be in white spaces at school. And so they're going to need to have that break away from spaces where they're in the minority and be around other Black people. I'm a proud, active financial member of Capital Office Fraternity Incorporated, and I'm always, reminding folks that the Kappa League is a really good training ground for young Black men, and not to take away from other organizations, because all the fraternities have mentoring organizations. But I'm always gonna push the Kappa League because those are my fraternity brothers that are running it. And so things like that are good training grounds for young Black men because they get to see older Black men doing their thing and being pretty while doing it.
I love it.
And so, yeah.
Pretty well.
I'm pretty on my left and pretty on my right.
I
So,
You knew we would love that one. You knew we would love that one.
yes. But so, and spaces like that are really good for young Black men, and forging spaces like that where young Black men can be with other Black people, and need I say, not all skin folk or kinfolk. So be on kinfolk Black people, and learn that pride and that sense of resilience that we have as Black people.
Well,
I agree, and that's really what my son would get from those Kwanzaa experiences. Just rooms full, and just comfort, and just food, and just experiences, and walk away with some knowledge for the rest of the year. So, looking for those even year round. African Fest, you know what I mean? I used to take him to every single in Chicago. He would just be in spaces with people, Black people, and he would just be comfortable. And I know the African Fest can be a bit diverse, but still, it was a space created for us, and it was comforted for us, and we would just be there all day where he could just immerse himself. So I completely concur.
I'd like to thank everyone, all my attendees for tuning in, but I especially like to thank my panel. It's been a very, very excellent discussion. It passed every type of thought I thought was going to happen. So I'd like to thank you all. But before we go, I'd like to give all my panelists a chance to give their bio again, and any way you might be able to contact them, and if they have any type of business things that they want to pass on, please do. So I'll start off with Dr. David, and then just work across to Sister Nickia, then Dr. Asabi.
Yeah, everybody. Thank you all once again for this opportunity. Thank you all for tuning in. Again, I'm Dr. David Ford. I'm faculty at Monmouth University on the Jersey Shore, and I'm also the president-elect of the New Jersey Counseling Association. Yes. And so we're wrapping up our state conference this a week from today with the second weekend of our state conference. And I'm just a good old Southern boy from North Carolina, where we're the only state that serves real barbecue. And yes, I'll call anybody from Kansas, Texas, or Memphis say, "Oh, the best barbecue around, the only real barbecue." And I'm a proud graduate of Wake Forest University, undergrad and grad, in my PhD at Old Dominion. And, just here doing my thing, trying to bring my full Black self. I make my office Black as fuck, my classes Black as fuck, and, being true to form. I'm a queer Black man who's a Baptist, and, if you want to reach me, david.fordphd@gmail.com. That's my email address. And I'm just here by the grace of the Lord.
Amen.
Amen. Nickia.
Oh, I'm going. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Nickia Lowery. I am a licensed professional counselor here in Georgia, but I practice both in Georgia and Pennsylvania, so I do virtual counseling. The name of my practice is Optimum Purpose Counseling and Education, LLC. I specialize in trauma. I'm a graduate of Temple University, and also one of the oldest HBCUs in the country, Lincoln University of Pennsylvania. And go Lions. But so I just published a book as well. So if you know, as a trauma therapist, I am also a domestic abuse survivor. And so this is something that, you know, I really birthed from my heart as a professional in my own experience of kind of moving past that trauma and really healing in that post post first year, really, that it's you know, that struggle of just kind of, for lack of a better word, reprogramming yourself, because, you know, that takes a toll on you over the years. And it's called 12 Ways to Healing. It is a guided journal, so you know, it's going to offer you coping strategies. I mean, there's all types of stuff in there. Coping strategies. There's adult coloring pages in there. There's free writing, affirmations, you name it. So you know, that's available on Amazon, and that's pretty much it. You know, that's in a nutshell.
And I am Dr. Asabi Dean, assistant professor at Quincy University here in Quincy, Illinois. I am a native Chicagoan and did my undergraduate and graduate, first graduate degree at Chicago State University. I am a proud Chicago Stadian. And then I did my doctorate at University of Iowa, and I am a Hawkeye who bleeds black and gold, so I'm all over the place. All of my schools were like little cults. My predominant research interest is mental and emotional trauma. I do quite a bit of work in the area of racial trauma and also implicit bias, starting with the work I had to do with my son when he was in 6th grade. I recently published an article with some colleagues in the Australian Journal on trauma and across the lifespan and what it looks like, particularly with women. And so that's been an area I've been wanting to work on. And I've also started to work on my memoir. So just a couple of things about me. And I guess the last thing about me would be that I grew up for tenure. So I may be a part of the Bricks here at Quincy come the fall. I'm excited. And to contact me, it would be my last name and the first 2 letters of my first name, Dean AS at quincy.edu.
Yay.
Oh, I forgot to say, you can follow me on social media at Dope Therapist, because I'm always giving out a lot of good trauma coping strategies for trauma and different informational things. So if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's at Dope Therapist. I forgot to add that.
At Dope Therapist on Instagram. Dr. Ford, you have anything?
I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter. My Twitter handle is Counselor New PhD.
Counselor Noop? Okay.
Yeah, Counselor New PhD.
Oh, I'm on Twitter too.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody who participated.
Dr. Is counselor spelled out, Dr. Ford?
Yes, it's all together. Counselor New PhD.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd like to thank my panelists for their lively discussion, their expertise. Please reach out to them and then contact them. It's a very strong panel, and it's good to see brothers and sisters that are scholars from African descent talking about issues that matters to our community. My name is Dr. Malik Raheem, and I'm a clinical assistant professor at Wilberforce University, and I just love people in general, but I love Black people especially, and I want to see intergenerational trauma to be taken care of, and I really encourage everyone to go get counseling on a regular basis, and I have 3 great professionals here that can help you and guide you along the way. So I promise I wasn't going to keep them too long, but the discussion got a lot more better than anything, but sometimes we need some chicken soup for the soul. So nice. You all take care, yes. And thank you all for participating in this panel discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Raheem, for putting it together. Good job.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.